One of the biggest political stories this week isn't just about Nolan Wells. It was, however, about Dr. Anthony Fauci and what he said. It's about what he didn't say. We all know that Fauci knew more than he told us. Appearing before a Senate committee after being subpoenaed this week, Dr. Fauci invoked his Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination more than 100 times rather than answering any questions about his handling of COVID-19 and the whole pandemic. Just this week, so don't be distracted completely about other cases. That immediately raised serious questions. If President Joe Biden already granted Dr. Fauci a preemptive pardon for federal offenses committed during a specific period, why invoke the Fifth Amendment? Is it an admission of guilt, or is it simply a legal strategy? Today, we're going to separate the politics from the law. Please remember to like, follow, share, and comment. Welcome to Money and Politics Simplified. I'm Esco Latimer. This hearing has reignited one of the biggest debates left over from the COVID-19 pandemic. Dr. Fauci's critics say the American people deserve clear answers still to this day, sir. His supporters argue he is exercising a constitutional right because he believes the hearing could expose him to additional legal jeopardy. So is that fair? Today, we're not here to decide guilt or innocence. We're here to understand why someone as important as he was has already received a presidential pardon that still feels that he has to make a Fifth Amendment plea. And as always, we're going to simplify it. Dr. Anthony Fauci appeared before a House Senate Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Committee after being subpoenaed by Chairman Paul. Rather than answer questions about COVID-19, which he did not do, and the policies, research funding, and other pandemic-related issues, Fauci invoked his Fifth Amendment privilege against self-incrimination repeatedly throughout the entire hearing. I believe they even asked him about colors, and he said, I plead the fifth. Before doing so, Fauci said he believed the hearing was intended to build a criminal case against him and that he was acting on the advice of his attorneys. This is where many people are confused. President Biden previously issued a preemptive federal pardon covering Fauci for potential federal offenses during a specific period ending in January 2025. That does not look good for a man whose sole responsibility was to ensure and keep his U.S. citizens healthy and safe. But that does not necessarily mean Fauci has no legal risk. Legal experts have pointed out that a presidential pardon does not automatically eliminate every possible source of criminal exposure. Questions can remain about matters outside of the pardon scope or future testimony, or whether answers given under oath could create new legal issues, which is why he pled the fifth. Courts have not definitively resolved every question how a broad preemptive pardon, which I've never heard of before, a preemptive pardon affects a witness' ability to invoke the Fifth Amendment. Sounds really interesting. The Fifth Amendment exists to protect individuals from being compelled to provide testimony that could be used against them in a criminal case. Invoking it is not by itself an admission of guilt. Defense attorneys often advise clients to invoke the fifth when there is any realistic possibility that their testimony could later be used in criminal proceedings. One reason legal counsel may recommend silence is to avoid making statements under oath that could become the bias for allegations such as perjury or false statements if investigators later argue they were inaccurate. That is a legal risk separate from conduct covered by an earlier pardon. Critics and supporters see it differently. Critics argue that public officials who played a central role during the pandemic should answer difficult questions openly. They say transparency is essential to restoring public trust. Supporters counter that the Constitution protects everyone equally and that invoking the fifth is a legal right, not evidence of wrongdoing. They also argue that anyone facing a hearing they believe is designed to pursue criminal charges may reasonably follow their attorney's advice. I mean, that is the reason why you get an attorney, isn't it? Senator Ron Paul is not going for this. He indicated he intends to pursue contempt proceedings against Fauci. Whether that effort succeeds is uncertain, but Ron Paul is on it. Any criminal contempt case would face significant legal and procedure hurdles, and prosecutors would also have to address unresolved questions about the interaction between Fauci's pardon and his Fifth Amendment privilege. It's more like a right, not a privilege, right? So his legal battle may be far from over. What this means for Fauci is beyond a lot of people's scope. This case is bigger than one individual. It raises broader questions about congressional oversight, executive pardons, and constitutional rights. How much protection does a preemptive pardon actually provide? That is the question. Can someone who has been pardoned still invoke the Fifth? Those are legal questions that may ultimately require judicial resolution. Constitution applies to everyone. People often support the Fifth Amendment when it protects someone they agree with. This is normal. And criticize it when it protects someone they oppose. This is also normal. The legal principle remains the same. The challenge is applying it consistently, which is abnormal. So as always, let's simplify it, okay? Here's what we know for a fact. Dr. Fauci invoked the Fifth Amendment more than 100 times during a Senate hearing this past week. More than 100 times. That's a lot. He had previously received a presidential pardon covering certain, not all, but certain federal conducts during a specific period of time. It is reasonably to infer that one purpose of invoking the Fifth is to avoid creating new legal exposure through sworn testimony if attorneys believe there remains a risk. However, Fauci and his attorneys have not publicly said that this was the sole reason for invoking the Fifth. And there are unresolved legal questions about the scope of his pardon and privilege. Those issues may ultimately be decided by the courts, but we will see. Here's where I stand. The American people deserve truthful answers from public officials whose decisions affected millions of lives, some of which lost their lives. At the same time, our constitutional rights don't disappear because a case is politically controversial. If the law gives every citizen the right to invoke the Fifth Amendment, then that protection applies to Dr. Fauci as well and equally. But exercising that right does not end the public debate. People are still free to ask questions about pandemic policies, government decision-making, and whether officials exercise sound judgment. Those questions should be answered through evidence, oversight, and due process, not assumptions. So what do you think? If someone has already received a presidential pardon, should they still be able to invoke the Fifth Amendment? Or should a pardon require them to answer questions under oath? Let me know in the comments below. I'm looking forward to it, everybody. I am Esco Latimer. Please remember to like, follow, share, and comment below. This is Money and Politics Simplified. Stay informed, stay engaged. Because when you understand the facts about Dr. Fauci invoking the Fifth, even with a presidential pardon, well, my friends, you understand politics. Have a good day.
Talking money, talking power. Follow the paper and you find a throne. Deals in the back while the cameras roll. Who's funding fear? Who's buying hope? Who's pulling strings every time we vote? Money and